Swapping is the way to go. Charging either out charging.
I don't think I would do that.
You can see pass, swap, and come.
Yeah, we're live, sir.
Yeah, hi.
Yes, Shailesh.
Hi, everybody. So great. So welcome to on this session. I call it debate of the decade. Like what is going to happen, charging versus swapping. And we have a very interesting panel with us. We have Chandrashekhar Bhide, we have Shikhar Sharma and Pulkit Khurana. So I will give, I think, 1 minute each of you to just introduce yourself to the audience, and then probably we'll start the discussions. Yeah, starting with Pulkit.
Sure. Thanks, Shailesh. So, hi everyone, and thanks, Shailesh, for having us on this panel. At Battery Smart, we are building the largest and fastest growing swap network for India. It's an open access network for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, where we are promising availability of a charged battery within 1 kilometer from every user. Currently, we are present in NCR across 90 plus locations. We've done 1.5 lakh battery swaps in just over a year, and aggressively adding more and more stations and vehicles to the platform. And I think that is about the intro. Although we come from a bias of swapping and we are extremely bullish about it, I would love to share my thoughts on both ends, charging and swapping, and how that we think would play out in India.
Great.
We have also, Aayushi has also joined in from MoEVing.
Great, Aayushi. Yeah, Shikhar, but give me just a background view, yeah.
Yeah, hi. So we at Sheru are building a pay-per-use energy platform for e-mobility businesses. We are the present go-to market is e-rickshaws because it presents a very unique case, specifically in the Indian ecosystem. We have been scaling rapidly, seeing 100% month-on-month growth for the past 6 to 7 months, and plan to exit this year with at least we're doing at least 1 lakh kilometers per day.
Wow. Chandrashekhar,
Yeah.
yeah. Your 1 minute introduction, yes.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, Chandrashekhar, can you give us just 1 minute introduction of yours?
That's Chandrashekhar. Okay.
I don't think we can hear Chandrashekhar.
And while we connect with Chandrashekhar, can we have Aayushi? Aayushi, hi. I'm Shailesh.
Hi,
Can you give us just 1 minute introduction to about what you're doing? Yeah.
Absolutely. No, great being here. So at MoEVing, we are basically a tech platform bringing supply, demand, as well as charging infrastructure on one tech platform. Starting off with the B2B space, specifically logistics. That's what we've been working on since February 22nd of this year. And are now in 9+ cities and looking to grow the EV ecosystem in India.
Great. Yeah, Chandrashekhar, can we hear from you?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. There was some problem with the audio. Sorry. So I represent Lithion Power. We started our business commercially with swapping solutions for low to medium power electric vehicles about 3.5 years back. And currently, we have a network in Delhi NCR region, and we are expanding rapidly. We also power our electric vehicle fleet, which is across two-wheelers and three-wheelers, for doing last mile e-commerce deliveries.
Great. So I think we have a very interesting panel here. There are two people who are really doing swapping. So I think Pulkit is really on the swapping. Shikhar is doing swapping, but is talking more of pay per use. While Aayushi is more building a platform, and Chandrashekhar has built a network and also operate a vehicle. So I will start from Aayushi. Aayushi as a user, right? Yeah, you are an end user. Are you neutral to swapping or versus charging, or you are very inclined to something? And if it's the case, yes or no, and why?
No, we are tech agnostic. We realize that we are still in very early stages when it comes to EV, and we want to work with both sides to ensure, in the end, infrastructure is accessible. You have to realize I'm working with 500 plus drivers a day. अगर वो driver plug in नहीं कर पा रहा या swap नहीं कर पा रहा, that's it for me. So as long as the option is profitable, accessible, and sustainable for me, I'm open to both sides.
So when you say you are using 500 drivers a day, so how many are of them are swapping or how many of them are charging?
Right now, majority are charging. Swapping, we are still in pilot stages, but
Okay.
I would say 95% are plugging in on a slow charger actually.
Okay, and 5% will go to swapping. And in going forward in a year's time, where do you see the market going?
Again, from our end, in the end, swapping or charging, in the end, it comes down to the range of the vehicle that ends up happening on the vehicle. So I see it going. We are very neutral to it. I would say about 70 to 80% plug-in and at least 30% swapping. I do see swapping happening, especially on the two-wheeler front.
Okay, swapping happened to wheeler front, right? So Chandrasekhar, on the same question on you. Like, say, how where do you see the swapping and charging going?
More on the B2B side. Okay, so we work with fleet operators, drivers. We also run our own fleet. Okay, and in a B2B scenario, the kilometers covered on a daily basis are decently higher. Sometimes significantly higher than a B2C retail individual. While for an individual, the downtime doesn't matter much because they can charge at night, at home, wherever. But for a person, whose daily revenue or income is directly proportional to the kilometers that they travel in a daily basis, either doing public shared mobility or for delivering packets on the go, right? Significant amount of downtime, which is couple of hours for a two-wheeler or three-wheeler, is not good. So what most of the fleet operators want is to have a quick swapping. Okay, and this is what we have commercially deployed also. Of course there is charging. As you know, sometimes the question is a little amusing. You cannot have swapping without charging because you need to charge the batteries, right? Battery charging happens. It's just that the battery is removed from the vehicle and then it is charged, right? We don't do fast charging. It deteriorates and has a negative impact on the life of the battery. So we do regular slow charging. It's just that it is scheduled before the requirement for a charge battery happens. So in our operations, we do primarily swapping. Okay, and this is across two wheelers and three wheelers.
So how many vehicles
And
do you have right now?
so right now we have less than 100 vehicles, but we are scaling up significantly.
So all of
Uh,
them are on swapping.
yeah, right, right.
Okay. So coming to
Till
Pulkit.
last year, we had actually more number of vehicles on the ground, but because of COVID, some of these fleet operators they shut shop.
Oh, got it. Understood. Sorry. So I will go back to Pulkit now. Pulkit, you said the swapping, and I think so. So what Aayushi is saying that okay, 95% is still on slow charging and 5% are on swapping. So what do you think? What is really hampering the growth of swapping? So we are hitting a lot of swapping, but if I see Delhi NCR, I think almost 80% to 90% will be on direct charging rather than as Chandrashekhar rightly pointed out that everything is charging but non-removable vehicles are still 95%. So what will take to scale it up? Why it is not
Right.
scaling that fast?
Right. So I think swapping is a recent phenomena which is picking up, and we are happy to kind of lead that from the forefront. And glad to see Shikhar also pointing out a 1 lakh kilometer target. We are already doing 1 lakh kilometer electric kilometers a day on swapping alone. But what Shailesh, you have to see that is what both Aayushi and Chandrashekhar mentioned. Downtime problem is the biggest hurdle for EV adoption, especially commercial use cases. It is almost criminal to expect a fleet operator to waste 3 to 4 hours charging rather than earning and sweating his asset. And that is where swapping comes into play. It's a 2 minute swap. You don't need to worry about range if there's a dense enough network out there where you can swap your batteries. Now, what has been the limiting factors? Obviously, swapping is much more difficult as a business to build compared to charging, where it's a low-cost charger that you are installing as a slow charger and wait for the utilization to pick up. Whereas swapping comes bundled with battery as a service proposition. Your batteries, you are also solving for the capex problem, which Aayushi and Chandrasekhar, I'm sure, suffer from. Is the large capex that goes into buying a battery, and which is a recurring capex. A couple of years down the line, they'll need to replace their batteries. Now, swapping comes bundled with battery as a service. The battery responsibility is assumed by the network. The capex for operators goes down by as high as 40%, which means it becomes more capital intensive to do it at scale. And you have to be very innovative and asset light to be doing that if you want to rapidly grow. So that being said, and there are standardization issues, there are form factor issues. You need to be on minimal number of SKUs if you want to drive high enough utilization for your batteries. It is a difficult business to build compared to charging, and that is why we think that the pickups have been slow. Not a lot of players have taken a bold bet to attempt at it. Uh, it is happening in China at a large scale, more than 1 million swaps every day. Also picking up for cars, both in West and East. Ample and Neo is doing a good job. So swapping has inherent advantages over charging. Everyone knows that. From the back end, from a swap network point of view, it is much more difficult to build. It is tech intensive. You have to optimize for utilization of batteries. You have to optimize for minimum downtime and minimum dead kilometers for the fleet user. And that is why I think it has been a bit slower. Charging was much easier to get
So,
on.
okay, got it. I think you said it's a very complex to build, and I coming Shikhar to you, right? So if you say, I think Pulkit make a mention that at the end of the day you take care of the capex. So don't you think the swapping is kind of a lending business? Is it disguised lending, right? I think Kunal Shah tweeted long back that lending is a feature, and probably swapping is lending is inbuilt feature there. What is your view on there?
No,
No,
so
so a couple of. Oh, sorry.
was it Shikhar or Chandrashekhar? I'm sorry.
No, Shikhar, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be one of the things. But then again, understand there are a lot of problems that are inherent with the customer today. So we have to firstly understand what are the problems with the customer. Is it capex? Is it interoperability? Is it downtime? Is it servicing? Is it availability? What all are the problems? We can't just shove a solution down the person's throat. So if you understand what the customer's problems are, therein you can build a pay-per-use kind of a business on which build a metric that is most closely relatable to him. So if let's say pay per kilometer is one of the solutions that you could build for somebody whose revenue is directly linked to his kilometers, or his expenses are directly linked to his kilometers, right? And therein you can decide, okay, whether it's charging that's going to work for this guy. If he doesn't, if he's operating in a hub and spoke fashion, probably he would have enough time to bring his vehicle to the hub and then charge his vehicle. So for him, definitely paying a premium for battery swapping would not make sense, right? And on the second hand, if obviously downtime and capex are definitely one of the biggest problems, then battery swapping would make sense. So the platform would kind of take care of all these things. What are the problems of the customer, and not make it just a lending business, but then inculcate all these things and make it as a complete solution, custom tailored for the customer.
Got it. So, Shikhar, you said that there is a premium on swapping, right? I think Pulkit, you will agree there also that there is a little bit premium when it comes to swapping. So, Aayushi, as a user, as an end user, how open you are to give a premium on a swapping?
I think we'll be open to it. Again, it comes down to economics, right? If I'm able to save 3.5, 4 hours in general, and I'm able to
So tell
make.
me what kind of premium you are happy to pay. Like say if the guy is charging say ₹2, and then will you be pay for 250? I think I'm trying to figure out a model for Pulkit. So next time,
We'll hold.
बात कर रहे हैं, but
We will hold Aayushi accountable for that number.
no.
done. ठीक है, ready. In the end, it'll come down to how many more deliveries I can make, right? And open to working with the companies and figuring that out. But I would actually like to go back to what Pulkit was talking about in terms of standardization. I think that's the biggest issue for us. Infrastructure is coming up, swapping, yeah, plug-in ho. But you have to have basic standardization. You can't expect someone who's buying vehicles to just go to one OEM, and because I know I'm just working with one swapping company or one charging company, because they've just tied up with one OEM. So interoperability in terms of just swapping is extremely important when it comes to two-wheelers, three-wheelers, or any form factor. And then of course, just one more thing is learning from the telecom sector. We have to understand that we all have to work together. We have to have basic API integrations, because you can't expect my driver or even me, as I'm an Nexon EV user, I have at least 8 apps on my phone, and probably I'm confused on how I'm paying on each app. I have to have just one place to actually get a driver to see any point near him or her. It may be swapping, plug-in, whatever it is. So again, standardization in terms of the battery as well as a larger interoperability is extremely important.
Got it. So you are saying that. So when you are saying the standard, you mean basically the interoperability, right?
Yes, when it comes to the battery itself, right? Like
So
I
you are
can't
saying that the battery should be able to move one from one vehicle to second vehicle. So while the registration of the vehicle where battery is allowed, but is the battery interoperability between multiple manufacturers, is that allowed? I don't know about this. Shikhar or Pulkit, any of you want to put
Yeah,
in?
so I think as of last October, it doesn't matter as long as both the products are RERA approved. And in fact, I'm sure Shikhar also does that. We already are interoperable across not just different models of three-wheelers, but also different models of two-wheelers and three-wheelers with the same battery pack.
Yeah,
So
right.
we are operating on just a single SKU out there.
Okay.
The other point which Aayushi makes is even more interesting. A bit far-fetched to happen very soon is how we see it, is the interoperability across networks themselves, right? Much like telecom, I think the industry is not yet mature enough for that to happen immediately. It will happen in charging very soon, and all because the standardization on the plug point exists. There's an open network to which government is mandating every charger to sign up to. So I think that is going to happen much faster than the swapping interoperability across network. A lot of OEMs would also attempt to set up their own charging or swapping networks, which they are doing. But eventually, I think Ayushi is right. There would be interoperability when the industry is mature enough.
Got it. So coming to Chandrasekhar, now you again same question which I asked to Ayushi. Now you also operate fleet, right? And you have swapping. So your customers, how open they are to pay premium on this swapping?
For them, they do it. It is very simple. And I actually, wanted to correct Pulkit when he said that swapping is a recent phenomena. We actually launched swapping solutions commercially in February of 2018. Okay, so we have been doing it since that time, and people are willing to pay. There, Shikhar mentioned about different models, pay per use and all of that. So we actually have implemented, daily basis, per kilometer basis, subject to minimum limits and all of that. All that is done, implemented, commercially deployed. And what Aayushi is mentioning is about the standardization or lack thereof. There are actually solutions in place which are already being implemented. And see, it's like this. Most of the OEMs, they are not experts in batteries, so they are happy to take batteries from somebody else. Now, as long as the battery guys understand that more important than the form factor, it is the data, it is the it is the connections, it is the connectors with the vehicle and whatever, right? As long as that is standardized, and we have seen this happen. For example, for the electric three wheelers, there is an Anderson connector which more often than not works with most of the electric three wheelers. And if you see the battery capacity for a electric three wheeler, it is generally within plus minus 10%, right? So, the form factor, and if you have seen a physical electric rickshaw or electric auto, the battery is located below the driver's seat or the passenger seat, depending on the configuration. And there is some amount of leeway. So you can have a battery which is slightly bigger or smaller. It will still accommodate as long as there is an Anderson connector. Now, what people miss is the data. Okay, so you need to have real-time data if you want to run a swapping operations efficiently. So we recognized this very early on, and we designed, developed, and rolled out our own battery management systems, which gives us real-time availability and visibility of all the technical parameters of the battery, some location parameters, some info about the vehicle, some info about the driver. All that is very crucial to run optimal swapping operations, without which you cannot. Otherwise, you are very dependent on, like others mentioned, dependent on the OEM. Now, the OEM typically is a guy who understands assembly, production, quality, and all of that. They don't understand the electronics. They don't understand the communication protocols. So that is something that needs to be addressed first. And you need not be in a hurry. The when telecom when handsets started appearing in the country about 25 years back, Nokia itself had 5 adapters for their own models, right? It took some time for it took actually at least more than a decade, maybe more, for people to standardize on only two connector types. So it will happen.
No, I don't know. That is there. So I think when you say the software, everything needs to be there. So I think there should be Find a much more standard, right? Probably anybody who has to build a swapping network will have this because I think more this is more of a hygiene. But let me put a now the real gorilla the question, right? So in the previous panel, the company was mentioned was Log9, right? Now Log9 they say is that their battery can be charged for in 5 minutes, have a 200-kilometer range, very range. So when something like Log9 comes into play, do you really think the need for swapping will exist?
See, it depends on the use case. Okay, it need not be one product or one solution for everyone. Now, there are certain benefits of a lithium-ion family of batteries. Okay, the supply chain is set. There
No,
is commercial viability and all of that.
no,
Right.
that is separate issue, Chandrashekhar. I'm saying there is a now battery chemistry which says you, or the iron chemistry which is coming, which says you, okay, you can charge a battery in 5 minutes and get 200-kilometer range. Do you still need swapping that point of time? Isn't that a technology risk exists on your mind all the time? Do you worry about it?
No, we don't, right? Because see, as long as there is a commercially viable use case for in the medium term, 3 to 5 years, yeah, I don't think you should be unnecessarily getting worried about other battery chemistries. As in, there have been discussion about lots of other chemistries, right? Aluminum hydroxide, fuel cell का तो decades से research चल रहा है, but it is not
So, yeah.
commercially
No,
rolled
it's
out.
a separate issue altogether. Yeah, so Pulkit, again, I also want to your reaction on this, like say long line kind of a thing, which I think will kind of disrupt the whole industry, right? What is
Yeah,
your take on this?
I definitely I agree with you, Shailesh. There, I think that is one disruption that keeps us awake. Uh, Infinite range or infinitely small charging time is makes swapping redundant. However, the third variable that is missing in the equation, as Chandrashekhar rightly said, is the economics. Would it come at the same price point as lithium ion? It took 10 years for us to be at this price point, and there are trillions of dollars invested into this chemistry. Would all of that get disrupted overnight? So maybe that disruption is out there, and it would eventually happen when the scale is there and economically it becomes viable. It's not going to happen in the next 5 to 7 years.
Got it.
Is how we see it. Also, swapping is more for, as all of us already agreed, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and more commercial use cases. Most cost-conscious sector. It is always going to be about the price point there. As long as your per kilometer cost or the range that you get for you get the maximum bang for the buck, right?
Got
Uh,
it.
I'll also
Can I
tie
add
that with
something to
the.
it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll just also add to it what you said. Otherwise, that lending is a feature, right? That stays. So irrespective,
Okay, so you will become the lender and the sort using
I,
this. Yeah, Shikhar, you want to add something?
I think it is a feature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Shikhar.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely we can talk about awesome chemistries that can probably charge at 10, 15, 20 C, take that much amount of charge. But we have to understand that there is an entire infrastructure play also involved. We have to, first of all, install those chargers who can pump in so much charge into the battery so fast. And we are already, first of all, debating right now that there is absolutely zero charging infrastructure. We're talking about slow chargers. We haven't even touched upon DC fast chargers, right? And we are talking about such huge batteries.
Yeah,
Secondly,
you got a point.
right now, the grid in itself is really worried about taking the EV adoption that is going to happen in the next 5 years. They're not prepared for it, right? Putting such instantaneous loads on the grid at that point of time with such heavy charging batteries, I'm not really sure
No,
how we can
I
reach to
think
that.
yeah, you have a point because we do not have corresponding charging infra to support, say, graphite batteries. Now, Ayushi, coming back, I think we are the last leg of the discussion. Just so, like, say you are a platform, right? So you are not a end consumer. They are the people whom you want to pitch. So your ultimate buyers, like say equivalent of Amazon or Flipkart or Groffer of the world, do they? So how they negotiate? I hear that they generally even pushing the cost down, right? Generally, they used to pay higher amount of money for the petrol and diesel, autos. But when it comes to the EVs, they are paying lower, right? And then do they? So do they really care that there's a minimum? So what is the expectation? Do they expect the vehicles to run 100 kilometers every day or 200 kilometers every day? What are the numbers we are talking here?
Generally, it's in the end, when it comes to two-wheelers, most of it is by the order. But I would say average kilometers that's run by a two-wheeler is about 100 to 90 to 100 kilometers, and a three-wheeler is also the same, 100 to 120 kilometers. But again, it comes down to again technology. how are you optimizing your fleets? It does not come down to how many vehicles you have, it's how you're using your vehicles. And again, that's why swapping does play a role somewhere. I do see India as a very dynamic and diverse market where both may exist parallel. So I would say it's not about expectation of an Amazon or Flipkart. वो तो आपको बहुत सारे orders दे देंगे. They would want to have you deliver as much. It's how you as a player have the basic IP in place to make those deliveries happen on the range that exists as of today. We can talk about battery chemistries and everything and we can plan, but आज आप क्या कर सकते हो and how you can execute is the most important aspect of it.
Got it. Got it. So I think we are almost coming to the end of this panel. So there's if there's any, I think this question generally getting asked on the panels. So if think of it, this thing is going to as a policy maker or anybody else. So other than funding, what is the big one change you will want in this industry to happen, which you think will really leapfrog the EV, other than funding? So start with Pulkit. Is there any one wish list you have or one thing you think, believe if that happens, the industry will just leapfrog? What is that?
I think that would be the standardization of batteries for swapping. Once that is done, all the interoperability issues and everything goes out. There are smaller things like bringing it at par to 5% GST for players like us. We are still buying batteries at 18%. There's subsidy issues, but I think those are smaller ones. But the standardization would really make
So
it
standardization, when you again I'm going back, that is the interoperability or every battery running
cross
say
network.
80 volt, right, or 48
Cross
volt.
network.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Got it. Shikhar.
Yeah, adding on to those two are obviously the main issues, but I mean, all the state governments in India have launched some kind of subsidies on EV meters, but ground reality is the implementation is really bad. Right? The discoms don't even have any idea that these subsidies exist or how to kind of implement them. So that is something that needs to be, addressed and done right.
Sashay, you seem very happy about it. So tell me, what is your thing?
We have looked at various policies at the state, different state levels and central levels, and I know what Shikhar is talking about. Anyway, so my request to the policymakers will be to give some amount of support on the swapping front. So there is some for charging, right? But swapping, it makes commercial sense in certain use cases, like we agreed on the B2B side. So if there is some, something given on that front, that will be nice. In addition to reducing the import duty on certain parameters, certain
I think,
specific parameters.
very interesting you brought in. So again, I will go back and ask another question to all of you. Don't you think the present policy of the government is anti-swapping? Because same too, right? When you buy a vehicle, you get a subsidy. But in a swapping, you don't get, right? Because of swapping, the vehicle is coming without a vehicle. So don't you think the present FAME 2 policy in per se is anti-swapping? What is your view?
Should I go first?
Yeah.
So I think that is the case, but that's not really a deterrent, right? So if you see, 98% of the electric vehicles today are commercial two-wheelers and three-wheelers, where we are saying swapping makes sense. You need to provide subsidy to the areas that are not picking up, which is cars and personal use cases. It makes sense to kind of divert subsidies there. Buses, cars, personal use case vehicles, and because they'll only make economic sense if there are subsidies because you're not utilizing them for long enough kilometers in a day. So I think it is just fair.
Got it. And Shikhar, on this subsidy point?
Yeah. I mean, there are intelligent financial plays around this. I mean, we have all seen in FAME1 subsidy how manufacturers have kind of circumvented all these things. So I think definitely we can look
Got it.
into those things.
So I think Aayushi, I will come to you now. I think you have two questions now. So one is that do you really? I don't know whether you really go deep in the subsidy side, but if there's a one wish list you have for the policy makers, what will be that?
I think Pulkit already brought it up. Standardization would be my top one, but I think adding to what Pulkit and Shikhar said is OEMs working very closely with swapping companies and charging companies, and there being some sort of accountability also, not just one OEM partnering with one swapping company, because that's what's happening in silos. I think larger movement in the next 2 to 3 years towards, again, that interoperability aspect to it will be very important. And second question, I would say, in the end, मुझे subsidized vehicle मिल रहा है. That's all matters to me. So no comments in general.
Got it. Chandrashekhar, any last thought?
Now,
Okay. So I think so. With this, our session is almost concluding. If any of you have to make any last comment or something, let me
I,
know.
Yeah,
I,
so
I would,
I would like to say one thing. It is not charging or swapping. Depending on the use case, you have to determine which method of delivering energy makes sense for you in a timely manner, in a cost appropriate manner, and all of that.
Which
And we are not just into swapping; we do charging as well. As in, everybody needs to understand, acknowledge this fact that there is charging.
correct, correct. So I think ठीक है, great. So we have almost now run out of our session. We have got 30 minutes. So thanks a lot for you guys. Really appreciate for spending so much time and giving insights. Look, keep interacting to you, right? Looking forward to interact you further. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
thanks,
Thank you,
Shailesh. Really
Shailesh.
enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.